Welcome to this explainer. We're jumping right into a structure so absolutely massive, and honestly so awe-inspiring, that it commands our attention today just as much as it did when it was built over 4,500 years ago. We're talking, of course, about the Great Pyramid of Giza. Just imagine standing right at the base of this towering ancient masterpiece, staring all the way up and realizing that everything you're looking at was achieved without a single modern machine.
Which brings us to a pretty massive investigative question, right? How exactly was a 481-foot monument built? Without cranes, without engines, without literally any of the heavy machinery that we rely on today. It's a genuine puzzle that has captivated historians, engineers, and curious minds for centuries. How in the world did they pull this off?
Section 1. A monumental ancient mystery.
Okay, if you could actually time travel back to when it was first completed, you'd be looking at a structure towering at a staggering 146.6 meters. That's 481 feet. And it gleamed in the desert sun, completely covered in these smooth, brilliantly white outer casing stones. Now, over time, a lot of those casing stones were lost or repurposed, bringing its current height down to about 138.8 meters, or 455 feet. But honestly, even slightly diminished, the scale is just absolutely massive.
And to really appreciate its longevity, just consider this timeline. It was built way back around 2580 to 2560 BC as a grand royal tomb for Pharaoh Khufu. The Great Pyramid perfectly reflected the ancient Egyptians' deep beliefs in the afterlife, designed to safely house the pharaoh for eternity. But here is the craziest part. It held the title of the tallest human-made structure on Earth for nearly 4,000 years. Just let that sink in for a second. 4 millennia. And present day, it still endures as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world.
Section 2. Blueprints and Building Blocks.
To pull off a structure that literally outlasts millennia, you can't exactly just start stacking rocks in the desert. The preparation at the Giza Plateau was staggering before a single stone was even laid. First, engineers had to select a highly stable limestone plateau just to support millions of tons of weight. Then, they leveled the base with astonishing accuracy. But for me, here is the most mind-blowing part. Even today, the pyramid's 4 sides are perfectly aligned with the cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. How did they do that? They surveyed the entire site using nothing but simple tools and careful observation of the sky.
2.3 million. I actually want to take a deliberate pause here. That is the approximate number of individual stone blocks used to construct the Great Pyramid. 2.3 million stones. And honestly, the logistics of actually moving those blocks, a total nightmare. Most of those 2.3 million blocks are limestone, weighing between 2 and 15 tons each, and they were quarried locally right near Giza. But the granite blocks, the ones used heavily in the King's Chamber, weigh over 50 tons each, and they definitely didn't come from next door. They were sourced from Aswan, which is hundreds of kilometers to the south, so you can see how this was an absolute logistical nightmare.
Section 3. Moving mountains of stone. So how on earth do you transport multi-ton limestone and 50-ton granite hundreds of kilometers and then up a rising structure without a single engine? Well, it required an incredible sequence of events. Step 1, they actually used the environment to their advantage. They transported those massive Aswan granite stones via boats on the Nile during the annual flood season to get them as close to the site as humanly possible. Step 2, they loaded these incredibly heavy blocks onto large wooden sledges. Step 3, they dampened the sand right in front of the sledges. And Step 4, massive teams pulled the blocks up into place using a system of ramps. Now, scholars still debate the exact shape of those ramps today, but they know ramps were absolutely essential, whether they were straight, zigzag, or in a spiral.
Actually, the true genius of this whole operation is hidden right there in the sand. Ancient Egyptian artwork literally shows workers pouring water in front of these sledges, and modern experiments have proven this wasn't just some ceremonial act. Dampening the sand significantly reduced friction. It literally made moving massive loads possible. It's just a beautifully simple, brilliant scientific solution to what seemed like an impossible physical problem.
Section 4. The true master builders.
All right, now that we know how the stones actually moved, we really need to ask exactly who was doing all this heavy pulling and lifting. For a really long time, popular culture has perpetuated a very specific myth, the idea that the Great Pyramid was built using slave labor. But the fact, which is heavily supported by modern archaeology, is that the pyramid was built by thousands of highly skilled laborers. These were highly organized, respected workers who rotated in teams, especially during that Nile flood season when their regular farming duties were paused.
And we know this for sure. It's not just a guess. The archaeological evidence is completely overwhelming. Excavations near Giza have literally unearthed the workers' villages. Archaeologists have found ancient bakeries that provided massive food rations, along with the actual construction tools they used. And perhaps most telling of all, they found dedicated burial sites for the laborers, alongside clear evidence of proper housing and even medical care. These were valued citizens contributing to a massive state project, not disposable slaves.
Section 5. Precision and Internal Marvels.
Because, believe it or not, the outside is really only half the story here. The internal engineering is just jaw-dropping. First, you have the King's Chamber, constructed from those massive 50-ton granite blocks we talked about earlier. Right above it, engineers built these genius relieving chambers specifically designed to distribute and reduce the tremendous overhead pressure of millions of tons of stone. Then there are these mysterious narrow shafts. Maybe they were symbolic for the soul's journey, or maybe practical for ventilation. We're still not entirely sure. And my absolute favorite fact, the craftsmanship is so incredibly precise that the stone joints are practically airtight. You literally cannot fit a thin blade between them. It is just stunning.
Section 6. Legacy and Lasting Myths. You know, when something is this mathematically perfect and this ancient, it tends to attract some pretty wild science fiction theories. You've probably heard the claims aliens built it, or maybe an advanced lost civilization. But hard archaeological evidence easily defeats these alien myths. We have the actual worker settlements, the physical tools they held in their hands, the quarry marks left right there on the stones, the documented transport systems, and ancient inscriptions. The true story isn't about aliens at all. It's about remarkable human organization, unparalleled engineering skill, and just sheer determination. Which brings us to a final thought to chew on. If ancient humans could achieve this monumental architectural masterpiece 4,500 years ago using just stone tools, brilliant organization, and human ambition, what are we capable of today? The Great Pyramid isn't just a tomb. It is a lasting symbol of our creative potential. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope it sparked your curiosity as much as it did mine. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you next time.